Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you find yourself listening to this episode of In Their Shoes presented by Second Mile Studios. As always, I'd like to shout out the man with the big vision to put this fine program together, Mr. Eddie, as well as my engineering partner Landon and myself, Garon. We hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Welcome to the very first episode of In Their Shoes. I'm very, very excited to just be going on this journey of, taking on the task that I feel like God has put on my heart. And just remember the idea behind these shows is really just to put ourselves into the shoes of others without, just assuming and writing people off. We really want to get to know people. We want to hear people's testimonies, their stories, why they believe what they believe, and what greater way to get started. I got one of my favorite people sitting in front of me right now. Great guy, incredible. Just to be around him, his excitement, the excitement that he brings into a room is just unlike any other. And it is my privilege, it's my honor to introduce to you guys our first guest on In Their Shoes. His name is Terrence Cole. We call him Big T from the Z. What's happening, Big T?
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm very, very good. So honored, like I said, that you would be a part of this thing right now, man. And we want to dive into it, man. What's up with T, man? What's up with Terrence? What's going on? Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Bro, I'm good though. I am Big T from the Z. That's what they call me now. Kind of starting my journey out. Where you want me to go with this, man? You want me to go back?
You know what? I want you to start back. We're gonna do this segment, Blast from the Past. So we're gonna take some time in the past. Tell us how you grew up, your family. Start there.
Yeah. Okay. So you want me to go back to when I was Lil T.
Lil T. Yeah. See,
Lil
right
T.
now
Lil T from the D.
Right now you Big T from the Z. I want you to take us back to where you was Lil T, like how you grew up, your parents.
Okay, so I grew up actually in Detroit, and I was born in Harvey, Illinois, and I don't know if you know about Harvey, Illinois. Harvey is a suburb of Chicago. Mm-hmm. It's one of the worstest places to live right at the moment. It's kind of overran with gangs and violence.
Right.
But that's where I was actually born at, and I think my mom said within the first year of my life we moved to Detroit. Mm-hmm. And my childhood started with my mom and my dad there. They were married. I remember going back. It's my earliest memory of my father. He was active in my life. I remember him cooking and just being there. Right. And we used to go to Belle Isle, is a big park in Detroit, mm-hmm. and he would take us there. I remember I wear a bald head. I've always had a bald head because one of the things that he used to take me and my brother to do is we used to get what is called a cavadas, mm-hmm. and that's a shaving with a razor, going to the barbershop, and man, it's just the best feeling in the world. And then I remember abruptly he was gone, and
one day out of the blue. By how old were you?
I don't really remember. I remember I was young. Mm-hmm. He didn't really go far. He stayed right across the street to your left. Mm-hmm. So he went to a man named Mr. Chisholm house, and they used to just sit out on the porch and drink. So mm-hmm. he was staying across the street, but mm-hmm. And my mom never really kind of stopped us from going. So I was, hey Dad, we're on the way to school, and I didn't understand it. It was weird, yeah.
So seeing your father, leaving your house and seeing your father across the way, had you ever taking the time to ask him, like, hey, what's going on? You know, Dad, like, 1 minute you're here and the next minute you're living across the street and, you know, you're drinking and we don't see you anymore. Was there ever a point where, you know, you got to sit down with him and kind of unpack what he was going through? Or
Later on in life, I did, but at the time, I had to be really young. I love my dad. I thought that I didn't see him in the house anymore, but I always saw him at Mr. Chisholm's house, and he was always intoxicated. So it was a hard thing. I didn't know what to kind of think. I couldn't figure it out. My mom really never talked about what that looked like and what that was. So I just kind of rolled with it. So
as a child, growing up, Dad's here one day, all is well. You know, he's participating like a father should, but like you said, he just ups and leaves one day. Walk me through what it looks like as a child growing up in that transition, because I feel like I know that there's a lot of the listeners that are listening now can relate to that story of maybe Dad being there and not being there one day, and then all of a sudden you know, you're this child who you have to deal with this transition. Walk us how a child overcomes such a seemingly, you know, horrific transition. Like, what is a child to do? I know you had your mother, you know, hanging around, and your mom. It's just something about moms, man. You know, they know how to be mom and dad, but still there's that element that seems to be missing sometimes. And I know as a child you would ask yourself, like, Dad, what's going on? So walk us through that transition a little bit of, you know, you growing through that.
Well, knowledge is power. So the more information you have, the better you can process things. And
Definitely.
during that transition, I wasn't given the information to properly transition and understand what was going on. From one moment, Dad was on Mr. Chisholm's porch, and then he's gone. And then now my mom is dating some guy, and he comes into the picture. He moves in, and like this, I seen her get picked up by him, and then they go on a date, and I'm still like, where's my dad?
Yeah, what's going on?
Nobody's communicating. Mom is not communicating, saying, hey, we're getting a divorce. We got a divorce. Hey, I'm kind of moving on. So from a child's perspective, I don't know what's going on. So I kind of rebelled against that. I go, who's this guy? Well, I never liked or allowed in my mind somebody else to step in and kind of mold or shape me, because I don't think I was properly informed about what was really taking place. So like a takeaway for that is, you know, that should be explained to everybody involved. I was involved in the relationship of my mom and dad, but when they broke off, nothing was explained to us about, hey, what is going on?
Right.
And it was out of the act of love. It was out of the act of, I probably want to protect him. I'm trying to protect and shield me. You wouldn't understand, but kids understand, because what they see, you know, they see it and they've witnessed it, and then when it all unfold, you know, you kind of left hanging. So I kind of felt left hanging.
So what you're saying is you feel like if she would have at least trusted you enough to be able to handle the truth, you feel like the truth would have somehow allowed it to digest a whole lot easier, without having to suggest what the truth is. Maybe this is the truth, and maybe that's the truth. I definitely, even in my own life, I can say that I feel like truth is just, it's good, you know, it's good for the soul. And I think sometimes our loved ones, they have that, you know, capacity to say, yeah, I want to protect you, but here you are saying, you know, it probably would have served me better just to know the truth of what was going on if you would have been able to trust me with that. So here you are, you're starting to rebel. You're rebelling because you don't have the truth.
Yeah.
And you're just doing the best of, what you can. So what's that look like for your mom? Is she dealing with a rebellious kid from this age to that age? What's that look like?
Yeah, I think that's where the source of my standing out and acting out came from. It was just from not having clarity, and I don't know what's going on. So I'm actually pushing away from my mom because I don't really know. So I'm gravitating towards my friends and other people. I remember, so I failed the 4th grade. So this had to be when I was like in the 3rd grade. So if you could kind of measure the age that I was at the time, but I know my dad wasn't there when I failed. And I know I carried this issue into the school because I was confused, and I'm pretty much the same way. When my personality type, I have to have clarity and instruction and direction. If not, then I'm discombobulated in my mind, and I don't like to be that way. I like to, I walk in a controlled manner. So I like to have some type of insight of where I'm going, what I'm doing. It gets me nervous when I don't have that. So when my dad and I'm seeing this new guy around, and great guy. I mean, he was a great guy. It was just the insight that I didn't have caused me to shut down and push away.
So it's kind of like it's a snowball effect. Like 1 minute we're a family unit here. This is something that I can understand. This is something that is very important to me, and this is the focal point of how I deal with life. I have a structure in front of me, my mom and my dad, they're in front of me, and all of a sudden you rip that foundation out from under me, and now I'm stuck as a child in the 4th grade to try to figure this out. So now the confusion is spilling over from my household into my education, from my education. Now we're in our teenage years, and that rebellion took a hold of your life early. Talk about that rebellion when now we're moving into your teenage years. You're a teenager now, still with mom. She's still raising you. How does that look in school? Like, what's your first real encounter with like some serious trouble as a result of everything? And I can trust you. This guy here, if you need to hear it, he's gonna give you the real and the raw. So I want you guys to strap yourselves in for this one. So when's that first occurrence of this is a true act of rebellion? You're stepping into your own, and you're coming into your own, and you're trying to figure this life thing out. What's that look like?
Well, me and my homeboy, Randy, that's like, he's a lifelong friend. We still good friends now. He lived on 2 houses off the corner from the street that we grew up on. Our elementary school is right on the end of the corner. So we just, we found ourselves, we was just exploring. We found ourselves in so many different situations. My first actual, I've done so much. I mean, but the most notable thing was, I think I was in the 5th grade. We had clubhouses all over the neighborhood. We would take an abandoned building or an abandoned garage, and we build clubhouses. And in Detroit, it get cold, so in the wintertime, it's not much to do. So we will build fires and have bonfires. And it was cool. We had our own place. We would act like this is our bachelor pad.
Right.
It was cool. Well, we found this boat down at the end of the road, and we turned it into our clubhouse.
Right.
But I didn't realize that it was somebody's boat. Right. They wasn't using it at the time, so we kind of went down in there, and it was cool. It was already like we didn't have to do anything, so it was like, let's do a fire.
Yeah.
So not understanding the concept of what fire do.
Right.
We end up setting the boat on fire. The house in front of it, the house next to it.
Whoa.
And the house on the other side of it. So as we're standing out there watching the fire, everybody's like, wow, how did that happen? And I'm standing next to my mom, and first thing she asked me, did you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Because she knew, like,
She
I
had
was
that
just,
expectation.
yeah, you got something to do. Where were you at?
Yeah.
And she went to, like, her investigation. Well, where were you at? Because our mindset and our ability, we come in, we had chores, we knew what our chores is. You do your chores, you can go out, you good. You go, we play football, we do kind of just roam the streets. But so I knew to get my chores done, and then I was out. Me and Randy, we traveled all over, and as watching that fire go, I was saying to myself, wow, wow, how did I let this happen? And I had the opportunity right then to say, hey, that was me, but I lied. And nothing really came out of it, but that destroyed a lot of lives. Nobody got hurt in the fire, but it was a lot of damage to people's lives. Now that I look back at it, that was somebody that actually lived there, somebody memories and, the stuff that they had and had possession of, and I just set it afire. So
it's such a good point. It's such a good point, though, because it's almost like seeing what took place in your heart come to fruition in reality. You know what I mean? Somebody set a fire. It's like somebody set a fire to what happened between mom and dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it destroyed that wholesome image that we have as a family unit. Like, this is what we expect, and here we are all these years later, watching the manifestation of it affecting the people around us. Like, that's a really profound thought when you just sit here and you think about it. Like, my parents had this profound effect on my life, and I know you love your mother. I'm sure that you love your mom, and I know you love your family, but it doesn't take away from the fact, that it caused damage, probably not only to you, but to your siblings. And it's probably something that we could not knowingly carry to this day. So now we're moving forward into real trouble. Nothing ever really came out of that. 17, 18. What does that look like for Terrence?
Wow. Let's skip back to about 12.
12.
Yeah, 12 is when I first. Let me get back to. We used to smoke a little bit too, so we was smoking cigarettes. We would try. That's where we first tried cigarettes. I was stealing cigarettes from my mom, and me and Randy, we would smoke and cough and all that. And then we first time I ever tried marijuana was, I think I was 10. Yeah, 10, about 10.
10 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old. And we got some weed, and we was didn't really even know how to even smoke it. But I was trying to smoke it like a cigarette, and oh my God, it was terrible. And then I think it was Randy. Yeah, Randy got some alcohol from his mom's. They had this little it was like a bar area, and no, that was in our basement. We had this little bar area, and we got some. So we was doing it up, because that's what we seen back then. They had like house parties. My mom had like house parties, and they would play cards and they fry fish and all that, and they would be drinking, and so people come over, smoke weed and all that, and so we seen that, and it was like trying to be cool like that. And so right around 10, 11, I started down the addiction road. 12, 13, I was actually drinking pretty heavy, and 14, 15, I was really in my middle school. We had a locker where we used to have gin and juice, and we would have all kind of we would put it in the locker, so we go doing the time and just get a nip. And by the time I was 16, I was like out there. I was.
Hindsight is always 20/20. So looking back, would you say that maybe you feel like you were trying to cope with everything that your surroundings?
Oh, yeah.
And that was the best way that you knew how to cope, because even when you were looking to your loved ones, that's how they coped.
Oh, yeah.
So you just kind of borrowed that and tried to make your way through.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I can, skip forward into my life right now, and then I'll dip back. The way I built my family is based upon from what I seen with my mom and my dad when they were together. How they operate. It broke me. It was that's something that I walked with, and as I found myself in different situations, I realized that the hurt that came from seeing my dad leave and not knowing and being lost in that was tragic to me, and all what I did came from that, because I was broken, and I was trying to put the pieces back together, trying to see how should I navigate, because as I looked at other people, what me and Randy had in common, Randy dad wasn't there, but we had friends that had dad, and they would take him to the park, and it was just me and him against the world, and that's kind of why we did all the things that we did, and we still have a bond right now. A little short note that I was in Detroit last year. Randy met his dad. I just happened to be in Detroit, and went to see him. He said, "Bro, I just found my dad," and he was like, "Will you go with me to meet him?" So I went with him the first time to meet his dad. And this been 40, 50 years. So it was just amazing that the feeling that I seen how it took us back to what we were feeling at the time.
And it's an incredible thought, because as I'm sitting here, I'm envisioning, these two kids against the world, no direction.
Yeah.
We're family. We're gonna figure this thing out.
Yeah.
We don't know any better. It's nobody around here really trying to lead us. With the exception of mom. We're gonna somewhat lead each other. You know what I mean? But explain to me, briefly. Explain to me the expression that your friend had when he told you. Was it an expression of gratefulness, like, yo, I know who my dad is, or was it frustration or anger, or was it like the genuine happiness for saying, hey, this guy who was supposed to be leading me my entire life, I finally found him, and it's never too late, to find what we're looking for in that leadership role when we look to our father like that? Was it? How was that for him?
It was strange, because when he talked, he said, "Bro, you ain't gonna believe that I found whom." He knew who his dad is. He just never had contact with him. So he was like, "I'm about to meet him," and it was nervousness. It was I don't know what to expect. He said, "Hey, yeah, I got some other brothers and sisters. I'm gonna meet them too." And when I was there, I felt like that was my dad too, because it gave me. I was so happy for Rand that he would got a chance to meet him. I mean, I guess. I had already made peace with my dad, and as we talked through that, I got a chance to express to my dad, get out of me what was in me, which gave me the opportunity to move on.
Got that closure.
Yeah.
So, kid growing up from Detroit, you know what I mean? That's enough in itself, right?
Yes,
Growing up in
yes.
Detroit, man, back in those days. So, kid growing up in Detroit, father walks out of his life. Were you guys in the church? Did you ever go to church? Like, what did you think growing up as a child? Like, was there a God for you? Was it like, how mom raised you?
Yeah, mom raised me, man. We were staunch Christians. I mean, I was raised in the church. We went to church 14 times a week. We was in church at just about every day, man. It was hard, bro. I enjoyed being in the atmosphere of church, but I didn't know what it was like. I mean, I would always sneak out and go to the store right around the corner, get candy. I always worked and hustled. I always shoveled snow, did all kind of stuff to keep my money, man. So but we was raised in the church, and that's a part of that legacy that I was saying I seen with my mom. We all went to church. Me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. My sister wasn't alive at the time, but I remember that riding in the car, me and my brother and my mom and dad in the front seat in a gremlin, a little yellow gremlin. And
Gremlins, man, that take me back.
So it was amazing. And then her new husband, who ended up, he was from the same church. It all was centered around church, and that, I think that was the hurting part, because I didn't have a concept of what being a Christian was.
Right.
But there was an environment that of trying to do right and trying to do better.
Right.
I remember when my dad left, the gremlin was gone, and now we was catching a bus.
Right.
Standing in the bus stop, super cold, going to church. And that's when it really started getting hard for me, because I was like, why are we doing this? Like, what? I wouldn't dare question or say anything about it to my mom.
If you questioned mama back then,
I was happy to be there.
You was asleep for the rest of the day. You
Yeah, and this is no way to bash my mom or dad, but I'm a person that speak the truth. I have to tell my story right and to really release the way in which I feel and how I operated. I have to tell the things that really affect me, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that, because they like to color things a certain way, and they never really get to the truth of the matter of the things that's really going on in them, because they don't want to offend. I'm not trying to offend, but if it offends, then hey. The truth is the truth. This blue is blue, baby.
Yeah, and we need that. We need that. That's why it's incredible that we get to sit together on this very first episode, because I'm a praying man, and I know everybody isn't, but I'm definitely a praying man. And I prayed. I said, God, I need you to send me someone who could be very real, very transparent, because we have people who are actually going through real struggles, not a mass struggle for them. It's very unmasked. It's very real. So the more transparent of a person I could interview, I knew that we could take someone from knowing what the problem is to finding that solution, which is why I know it's an extreme privilege, like I said earlier, to have you on the show, because that is where we're trying to move. We're trying to move people out of knowing what the problem is, and to have other people coming alongside of them, telling them what the problem is, pointing out the obvious. Yes, we know people in our lives have drug addictions. We know people in our lives lost their fathers, that they need to get their lives together, that they need to practice better practices to keep them from going back to jail. We know that, but we seldomly ever get to see the people who have walked in those shoes and who have walked through adversity and come out on the other side. And we seldomly hear about the platforms to where people can come to and say, yo, okay, it's this guy named Terrence. Like, our stories are almost identical. And not only did he walk me through, and I found a lot of similarity in my own life, but he actually told me how he got through. And sometimes that's not always a pretty picture. Sometimes alcohol, we lean on alcohol for a dependence. You know what I mean? Yo, I got to cope with this. So that's why I'm happy that you're here. And my next question for you was really what you were talking about earlier. Like, I'm going through the motions of going through church, and they're talking about Christianity. And for most, everybody thinks Christianity is just, I got to follow this set of rules or somebody's going to slap me upside of the head. At what point did you stop just going to church And at what point did the church start making sense in your heart? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go too fast, too far. I want you to tell me about some of the struggles that happen as a result of not really understanding like your place in life, or, you know, maybe not knowing God the way that you wanted to know God. Like, where did that take you? Where did this search take you?
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that you asked that, because the progression of my teenage life, even though I was immersed into the church, none of that took root into me, because I had the capacity to receive it and understand it, but I didn't apply myself. I was just there because my mom told me to go, and I was there because she told me to be there, and she brought me there. But when at the course of the thing that was burning in me, that was hurting me in such a way, drove me onto avenues that I found myself in places that I didn't necessarily think that I would be, or nor did I want to be there. I just I got up with a mindset every day is what will life bring me, and as I in the condition that I'm in now, in the mindset that I'm in now, I realize that the devil will come and he will provide opportunities and options for you. If you don't have a direction, then a direction will easily be provided for you. So I always took the opportunities that was presented to me, which led me astray. I look for the time to have a good time, to mask the pain, to run down the avenues that I thought would bring me most joy and happiness. When I was 16, I was really searching. Okay, money. I'm on the money hunt. So I was selling drugs and living in my mom. We had moved into a different neighborhood, and come to find out, that was when I was 14. I got a young woman pregnant and had a child. I didn't realize it till I was till last year, and I met my son for the first time last year, my oldest son. And but I was 15 when I had my first son. I was 16 when I had my second son. I was 18 when I had my first daughter, and I went to prison when I was 19.
So before we figure out how this lifestyle of just leaning into the things that came easily landed you in prison, tell me, let's go back to you figuring out that you have a child, because I thought about that, and it's last year you figuring out, I got a son, and I'm thinking about history repeating itself.
Yes.
Initially with you, dad walks out, and it causes just a butterfly effect, and now you are living that lifestyle that gets this young lady pregnant. She has this son, and you don't know about him. So it's not a walking away thing. It's even worse. You just didn't know about him for all of these years. Tell me what that feels like now that you know about him, and knowing the impact that your dad not being around had on you. What did that make you feel when you found out, like, I have a son that I don't know about?
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
It was just quickly how that transpired was I had a childhood friend that we was friends with, and we used to like each other, whatever. And she been Facebook friend, family friend for a long time. Out of nowhere, she called me and she said, "Hey, I just can't do this anymore. Can you do me a favor? Can you take a paternity test?" And I was like, "Well, hold on. but we didn't have sex. I mean, like
we just Facebook friends at this point. Like,
I remember we used to like kind of hang. My cousins stayed right down there. Was friends stayed on the street with my cousins, so all my mom and her cousins used to go to the bar, and they used to hang out. So they leave all the kids there, and so we used to go down to their house and kind of hang out. But I remember we kind of was messing around, but I never remember, having sex with her. And I was like, the man I am now, I was like, well, I said, Donna, I don't remember having sex. And she was like, I don't remember us having sex either, but it's you the only person that, like, remember that time we were in the room and we was kind of messing around? And I was like, yeah, but I don't think she was like, I said, sure, let's
take the test.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I seen him for the first time, I was like, trying to like, no, but my twin.
Yeah.
Like,
you knew.
So ultimately, we took the blood we took a swab our mouths, and when I met him, me and my wife said, I don't know if he's yours, but by God, I hope he is. Such a wonderful guy. I mean, him and his wife, they actually will be here tonight.
That's awesome.
They flying in. It's kind of ironic that we're doing this at this time because tomorrow I turn 50. So in the halfway mark of my life, I get the opportunity to share my life.
Oh, man.
So, So getting back to him. So that happened, and I was just blown away. The first thing I felt was guilt. And, he walked me through the scriptures, and he walked me through saying, having knowledge. If you had knowledge, then you should be guilty. But if you you didn't know, bro. I mean, it's not like and
this is your son saying this.
Yeah.
What does that feel? What does that even feel like?
It was great. It was great to know, but it was, for me, I'm glad I didn't know, because the person I was at the time I wouldn't been able to nourish the seed that was there.
Whoa.
It would have probably corrupted the seed.
Right.
So I'm glad I wasn't in his life at the time. But I robbed him of a lifelong of a person who I am. And I look back and I have some regrets, but I see how God shaped my future.
Yeah.
So I can't look back and penalize the seed that was planted, because the seed gave birth to who I am right now.
That's incredible.
I wrap my arms around everything that I've been through and everything that I am, because God created what I am today, and I'm happy with what He made me into. And I would have never foresaw this if as a young boy running the streets and then going through the addictions that I went through, and just I couldn't see it.
So, dark place, prison, addiction, just a place of, I would imagine, just hopelessness, regret, despair, so many different questions. And almost, when I'm talking about it, I get a picture of a fourth grader, that same fourth grader, where his father, walked out. I get a picture of that fourth grader, being sent to prison, not a grown man, but I get a picture of a fourth grader, being sent to prison. And I want you to walk us through that. You know what I mean? What does it feel like to still be having that same pressing question, that burning question, while going to prison and being addicted? What does that feel like?
Well, I always say and speak a lot about this subject, and I wasn't arrested. I was rescued. I was rescued from myself.
That's so good.
I had the opportunity to be taken away from the environment that was so readily providing me dangerous and things that wasn't edifying for me. It was destructive to me. And I got the opportunity, the precious opportunity from God to be put in an environment where I can grow. And when I went to prison was the best time of my life. I got the opportunity to be face to face with the things that I was really dealing with. And that's the first time I confronted my father. I confronted him. He still was kind of, hey, and he was in and out, but he came to visit me one day, and because prison gives you isolation. Isolation breeds the brain to recount, recalculate, and process out things, and it gave me a chance to grow up in prison, so I was able to start processing, hey, where's this stuff coming from, and why do I was so angry, aggressive, hateful, wasn't taught that way, that wasn't a mindset that my mom taught. She was always how she represented herself was loving, and the things that she taught us was to love, and we coming out of that church environment, but I was a dangerous individual. I knew that at the time that I was incarcerated, I was either gonna hurt somebody or somebody was gonna hurt me. So going into that environment, I realized that I had the opportunity to think, and I thought, and my dad came to visit me, and I, for the first time, told him really what was going on, and the conversation went like, hey, I just want to just share this with you. I don't know if you realize that I wish that you was there consistently. He said, I told him I loved you. I respect you. I saw you as the king, the ruler in our house. I don't even think I would be here if I knew you were conscious and focused, and the marriage that you had, you continued that and worked things out and for the sake of me. And my thing was, he started telling me about my mom and this and that, and I explained to him that the relationship that you had with my mom was between you and my mom, but that's a separate relationship that you have with your child. I said, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That you not liking her and you not getting along with her ain't got nothing to do with me. Bro, you told me you was coming to get me. I'm standing looking in the window waiting on you with my stuff packed, anxiously waiting on you, and you don't show up. You don't call. I don't see you for another month. So how did that have anything to do with my mom? That was you. It was you that got drunk. It was you that took care of another man's baby without taking care of me. And I'm begging for your attention. I'm asking to be with you. I'm calling you. I'm trying to be in your life. And you pushed me away. And it was a hard conversation. My brother and my sister, they didn't feel the way I feel. But they didn't go through the things that I went through because they didn't feel the way that I felt.
Which is bringing me to my next question, which is, I think a lot of the times when people are given their testimony, you get a lot of hearers that hear the testimony that said, what is your part in this, and I think that, people think that you can be afraid to, ask that question, but I know I can ask you that question because I know you had time to think about that. Agreeably, just being in your shoes for this 30 minutes we've been talking, I don't know how I would have handled that situation better or worse. I would say worse, as I'm sitting here just thinking about it and the angry guy that I was when I was growing up. But neither here nor there, we're addressing the faults of your father. Is there ever a point to where you say, now that I've finally addressed how you've negatively impacted my life, here's what I'm responsible for.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
Was there ever that moment?
Yes. Yes. And here's the thing. The first act of business when people are transforming, the first experience, emotional experience, is to blame. You blame outwardly. You always, you look at the situation that was going on inside of you, and you blame. I can a lot of people have been molested and went through all different types of, and so we have blame to give. There is a blame to place, but that don't dictate or give right to control the rest of your thoughts.
Right.
And so when I realized that, okay, yes, I got the opportunity to get that off my chest, and here's one of the things that I realized, okay, but I still don't feel the same. I still hurt. But when I look, and I say, and I've been saying this for the longest, I take responsibility for every action that I can't blame my dad for smoking weed. I can't blame my dad for the things. I still had the opportunity and options, and I chose that. I chose that because I felt that would help me. And I went down that road. I traveled down that road, and I found out down that road, these are things that still didn't help me and still didn't fix it. Even identifying where the source of my pain was, didn't realize that what I didn't realize is that that's not the source of my pain. That was the fire that was feeding. That was the logs that was one of the logs that was thrown onto the fire. But the fire was sin. I knew that the route that I took and the blame that I could easily place was on my dad. But when I started walking it back, no, I had many options. I didn't have to do what my sister and brother was in the same situation. They experienced the same thing. They didn't travel the road that I traveled, and my dad did the same thing to them also. But I chose this. So
that acceptance of your role was almost therapeutic, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You know, when you finally get to sit back and say, you know what, now that I'm done with the blame game outwardly, it's nobody left to point the finger at. I got to turn the finger on myself and take responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I get such a sense of saying, I get such a sense that says that is a therapeutic process, because now we're getting all the blame out of the way, and the leftover hurt that is left is the hurt that resides on the inside, and we got to deal with that blame internally. So presently, you know, I sit across the table from a man that is very accomplished by the grace of God. I sit across the table from a family man, married man, a guy that I really look up to. You know, I really look up to. And my question now is, the present Terrence, the Terrence that I'm sitting in front of right now, what would you say to the child, to the fourth grade Terrence? What would you say to him to impact him in a way that wouldn't have landed him in jail? Looking back now, presently, what could you have said to yourself to save yourself from a lot of the heartache? You know, because just like you listen to yourself when you chose to make the bad decisions, if you could lead yourself now and you could somehow go back, what would that look like? What could you tell yourself to find the freedom that comes from overcoming this situation in the present? Like, presently, you've overcome it. God has brought you through that. But is there something you could have said to your younger self to divert a lot of the disaster? And if so, what?
Amen. So let me just make this claim. I went to prison for robbing a pizza man. Got $38, and I did 8.5 years in prison. All that was brought on by me, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to be able to walk back to that fourth grader. And I encounter that fourth grader all the time. And here's the thing that one of the things that I say is I bring up my past because my past is a suitcase. It's all the things that's been packed away into all the negative things that have been packed away. And a lot of times, life, you carry these suitcases, you keep packing and you dragging these bags and all the things that you've been hurt by and the things that you went through and you drag these suitcases into every aspect of your life. And I drug it all the way into prison. And by the time I got out of prison, I realized and I got the freedom, not before I was released. I was freed when I came to understand that my actions dictate where I go. And I was freed by these two syllables, and it's OP, and there's options and opportunities. I realized that when God gave me the opportunity to be free, it takes a certain behavior and to learn how to live in freedom. Most people that are in bondage or walking in bondage, they can get free or they can shake off the entanglement, but they don't know how to live in freedom. They don't know how to move on in freedom. So one of the things that I encourage, like people that I see that they're hurting and they're going through, that I encourage this. I say this, that the suitcase, drop the suitcase, because I can get you to agree with me. I could connect with you. I can connect with the hurt. And if I can get the opportunity to connect with the hurt, I can get the opportunity to help you get free from it. Where I'm finding it hard, especially with young people, is to show them or for them to trust me to live in freedom. A lot of us connect by our dads wasn't there. We can even come to terms that we're ready to make decisions on our own. But it's getting to a place where it's hard for them to learn how to live in freedom. And what I mean by that is, because you asked me the question, what would I say to them? The questions is not what I would say to them. It's the opportunities that I provide to them to give them options. Because when I go back and I look over, I didn't have many options to go in a different way, to think in a different way. There was nobody there saying, hey, bro, think about this. Yeah, your dad wasn't there, but here, what about this? But I had options. I just didn't have anybody in my life pointing out, look at this. I played tennis. There was a recreation center called Maharis Recreation Center. I did karate. It was boxing. I had many options. But if somebody was in my life saying, bro, just focus on. So what I'm giving to the fourth grader, I'm telling them, look in your environment, look at the options you have. Yes, that you can go down this path. You can go down the path of hurt, but there's another option there. There's other resources, and the bags you pack to go down this road only gonna lead you to success.
And it's so incredible because while you're speaking, I get the visualization in my mind of you as a father to so many fourth graders now.
Yes,
in my mind, like if you're that fourth grader listening in right now, it's a guy I know who has a heart bigger than your mind can imagine, and he's saying, listen, get isolated with the truth. You know, when you went to prison, you said that isolation did you great, because it's almost like the isolation forced you to think about what the truth was. It forced you to have to cope with the feelings long enough to figure out what the absolute truth is. And for a fourth grader, that's not possible unless you have a fatherly figure that is next to you. And I'm pausing because this is not only a good podcast, but it's one that really hits me in my heart, man, because I know that it's a fourth grader out there right now who may not be hearing this podcast, but just know it's a big guy named Terrence, and he's coming to love on you. He's coming to make sure that you don't wind up in a position that he was in. He's coming to make sure that somebody walks this life out with you. And I just think it's a great thing what you said. Isolation is key. Being able to take every thought captive and how we feel about it and think about it long enough to come to the right decision and practice that right decision. I believe that as human beings, we're so quick to act before we think. We hear that all the time, think before you act. And what I hear from you now is you tell that fourth grader, listen, I know it's a lot going through your mind right now, and it makes you want to act out. But this is what I want to do. I want to take you by the hand. I want to bring you comfort. I want to give you a little peace and tell you everything is going to be okay. We're going to think about the decisions that we're going to make as a family. And that's what I'm getting right now. Listen, man, as we come to this part in the podcast, I really want to examine now who you are now. I want to examine the love of God that you've seen, because you spoke about that earlier. You touched on that, and you said something so powerful. You said, I saw the care of God, even though at the time I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened. I saw the care of God in that he would take a hold of me before I destroyed the rest of my life. At the big 5-0, 50 years, he don't look at people. I wish this was like video. God has been good to this man. I got to figure out the secret later. But tell me where you are now. Tell me what it feels like to look back on your life and see the goodness of God in the darkest spaces. And tell me what the future holds for Terrence Cole. And I just get the sense about you, like a fire about you that says there will not be another fourth grader. I will die before there'll be another fourth grader who does not have the guidance of a loving role model in his or her life. Tell me what it's like now for Terrence Cole at presently, and where you're going in the future.
Well, when I was released, I was 27, and I was ready to take my life in a different direction. I knew that God had given me favor, and I was ready to live in the freedom that he gave me. Mm-hmm. So I've learned how to make decisions quickly. Mm-hmm. Prison prepares you to, you don't have to mull over decisions. Mm-hmm. You have to make them, and you have to make them quickly.
Concisely, yeah.
And so the first quick decision I made was I was looking for a mate. And I came out of prison. I don't want to just be sleeping with around. I don't want to be hanging out. I don't want to do. I want a wife. Mm-hmm. I was looking for my mom. I was looking for the image that I constantly still have in my head. Me being the dad now, and I wanted to be. I wanted my family. Mm-hmm. I wanted to recreate that family that I seen in the beginning of my life. So. I was looking for a wife, and when I found my wife, I knew she was the right one. Mm-hmm. I knew she was the person that would complete me. Mm-hmm. And I met her. 5 weeks later, we got married. It was this is what I had. I had a job making $6 an hour, and a bunch of hopes and dreams. Mm-hmm. And from her perspective, look at what she married. She married a man that would just got out of prison 5 weeks ago, and 6 weeks ago, and make $6 an hour. This long history of this. Why would you go into a relationship? Why would you marry somebody like that? She says she's seen what God. She heard what God was saying in her ears. This is our 22nd year of marriage, and what I realized is that I was reborn. I was ready to take on this. So, walking up to your question, which will you say your question one more time?
Yes. It's presently, where are you at now? Looking back, seeing the grace, the mercy, the favor of God, the things that we mistake for the worst, it actually turned out to be the best. You're looking back on that now. You're taking one last look on that in the present. And you look forward to the future, and what do you see? What does Terrence see when he looks toward the future like the sunrise?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say that God has been really good to me. And so future looks like what it has been. He's given me the opportunity to touch lives based upon showing my life. I am a great plumb line or ruler for God, and what God can do. He can take the mess or the dirt and turn it into gold.
Yes.
And that's what he's done with my life. And so my mission that I've been on for a mighty long time, I go to the prisons, I go to the people and the kids that's so far away from God, because that's where I was, and I give them what God has given me. He's given me freedom. And freedom comes through opportunity and options. So when I come into someone's life, God has given me much. He's given me property. He's given me money. He's given me resources, so I can give to his people, because I don't come empty-handed. I look back at my life and I say, okay, I know my purpose. My purpose, you brought me this way so I can show the world that you exist, and your power, your glory, how you can take something and make something. And that's what he's done. So that's what I transfer. I to the day I die, I will be walking the earth showing what God, the opportunities that God have provided to me, because I don't have to worry about myself anymore. I ran that course. I always tell the kids in prison that I died a long time ago. I already lived a whole life up until I went to prison. And then when God transformed me, I get the chance now to live a different life. So going into the future, all I can see is what God is doing, like far as healing and delivering. And I mean, deliverance come from what we do and what we say to the people. And my life has truly been an open book for people to see how powerful God is.
Man, I can't tell you how much of a privilege, like I said. It's so awesome being in your shoes for just under an hour now. And as I look across the table, I see a man who has made many mistakes. I'm sure we all still make mistakes. And it's a picture. It paints this picture for me that no matter what shoes you have on, there is forgiveness that comes from God. There are second chances. It's so much grace, so much mercy, and just so much patience that God has with us, because I am sitting across from a man who has told me all of the things that God has brought him through, all of the bad decisions, everything, and God has continued to love him. So it's been such a privilege, such an honor to be in your shoes for just an honor, for just under an hour. And I just thank you for gracing us with your presence. I thank you for listening to that call of God and going after all those fourth graders, so we don't have to have another one believing that they are not loved by somebody. So Terrence, I thank you for being our first guest, man. It was really a blast, and we appreciate you for coming and giving us a little bit about yourself, man.
Amen. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, man. You want to pray us out?
I would love to.
Absolutely. That's great.
Father God, we thank you for your love and your grace. We thank you for this podcast. We thank you for every ear that hears the message that you have delivered. God, we know that our lives are not independent. God, that you created all things and you've made things new. And I thank you for the newness that's being made right now. I thank you for how that young fourth grader is hearing and saying that I don't have to travel that route. And God, I thank you for purpose. I thank you for the purpose that you have instituted this podcast, and every person that come behind and speaking to these microphones. God, we thank you for the anointing that you put on their voices and the direction that this is going, the healing that's going to come, the deliverance that's going to come, the freedom that's going to come. God, we ask right now, God, that every hand that was involved in this podcast, God, that you bless their lives, you touch them in a mighty way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks again, Terrence.
Thank you.
Oh, my.
Thank you for listening to In Their Shoes, a podcast produced by Second Mile Studios. If you're on iTunes, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you have any business inquiries, you can email us at thesecondmilestudios@gmail.com. That's THE2ND milestudios@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter at Second Mile Studios, 2ND Mile Studios. Thank you for listening to the Second Mile Studios podcast network, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of In Their Shoes.